I love our country, and one of the things about our country is good manners. Put that on the telly.
We're backing drivers by extending the freeze in fuel duty. This is possible because of the decisions taken by the Chancellor.
He is so deep in the bunker, Mr. Speaker, he is imposing price controls in the supermarket. It's like the Soviets won.
I mean, next week, no doubt, they'll try and nationalise retailers. We are not running now a government which can fund everybody's needs or sense of entitlement.
I left the government because we are in the fight of our lives against nationalism, and it is a fight that we are currently losing.
Keir Starmer came to the most difficult PMQs since the last most difficult PMQs, armed with what he thought was good news.
I can announce today that we're giving our hauliers a 12-month road tax holiday, helping to keep prices down. And we're backing drivers by extending the freeze in fuel duty for the rest of the year.
What he didn't want to talk about was a plan apparently cooked up by the Treasury to persuade supermarkets to cap prices on basic foodstuffs. Retailers are apoplectic.
Do we want state control? Do we want communism? Do we want socialism? Or do we want a free market economy? You cannot mess around with markets, and that's what's happening now with other markets, but you can help yourself. No, I think this idea on what they're trying to do on foods is complete and utter nonsense.
Why don't you tell us what you really think, Lord Rose? Well, the Conservative leader just about called the PM Comrade Keir.
I wonder if he is OK. He is so deep in the bunker, Mr. Speaker. He's importing sanctioned Russian oil. He's nationalising steel. He's imposing price controls in the supermarket. It's like the Soviets won.
Has she forgotten it was a Conservative Prime Minister who brought in price controls in the 1970s? Mind you, Starmer possibly didn't help himself by proudly claiming he'd signed a trade deal with Putin's friend, the Supreme Leader of North Korea.
In the last 2 years, I've been negotiating serious trade deals which are vital for our most important sectors of the economy. They're trade deals with the EU, but also with India, North Korea and the United States.
Whoops. Cue a rapid prime ministerial correction.
I've just been handed a note saying that I inadvertently said we did a trade deal with North Korea rather than South Korea. That would be breaking news. And not very good. So, before I'm referred to the Privilege Committee, can I correct the record?
As for his Chancellor, she found herself being confronted by one particularly angry voter at a petrol station in Leeds.
I love our country, and one of the things about our country is good manners. Not very British. Right, very good.
Great.
Put that on the telly.
Is that gallows humour, Chancellor? After the last few weeks, who can blame her? So there had been reports that Rachel Reeves was going to announce the fuel duty freeze tomorrow, but perhaps it wasn't a surprise that a Prime Minister who's had a tricky couple of weeks, to say the least, and who also wants to show he's getting on with tackling the cost of living crisis, decided he wanted to keep this one for himself. Let's hear from our business and economics correspondent Paul Kelso, who's been going through the details.
The government has announced that a 5p cut to fuel duty, the tax we pay on every litre of petrol and diesel, will be extended to the end of the year. Hauliers will also get a holiday from road tax, and red diesel for farmers also gets a duty cut. It's all part of what the Chancellor is promising will be a package of measures to support families with the cost of living. So why she moved on fuel? Well, the short answer is that the soaring price of oil caused by the attacks on Iran has made raising duty as planned politically impossible. Look, petrol is up at almost 160 pence a litre, diesel 35 pence more than that, approaching its post-Ukraine war peaks. And of these, pump prices, a whopping 52.95 pence on every litre is duty. And it was from September, it was due to start rising by 1p, then 2p more in December. But that now won't happen. And this helps us understand why. We can see what makes up the price of a litre of petrol and diesel here. The dark blue is wholesale costs, around a third of a litre of petrol and almost 40% for diesel. There's a small margin for delivery and retailers, and the largest slice, VAT in yellow and duty in red. 38% of the petrol price and 33% of diesel. Adding the full 5p of duty back on top of that, which was the plan by next March, would have pushed the tax take even higher when there is no guarantee that oil prices will fall. Now, this freeze comes with an immediate cost of £400 million to the Treasury and a likely further erosion of the money the measure raises. This shows fuel duty as a share of GDP, and you can see it's been in steady decline. The effective rate has fallen in real terms as successive governments have frozen it. George Osborne was the first back in 2011, and every year since then, chancellors of all stripes have continued with the annual fiction that it will be increased before they freeze it in the next budget. In 22-23, Rishi Sunak went further. He cut it by another 5p. That's the move Rachel Reeves had promised to reverse until she reversed. Now, we won't know what happens to fuel duty beyond the end of this year until the budget, and given the turmoil in the Labour Party, we can't even be sure Rachel Reeves will deliver that budget. But given the long history of what happens when chancellors run into motorists, another freeze is not out of the question.
Well, Labour peer Baroness Thangam Debbonaire and former Education Secretary Gillian Keegan are on the sofa tonight. Thangam, will this fuel duty initiative from the Prime Minister make the blindest bit of difference to his popularity?
Well, it's going to make a big difference to people's cost of living. And given that, now I'm coming to the popularity thing, given that the number one issue on the doorstep and in the opinion polls is still cost of living, I hope that people will start to feel it. And that's one of the things they want Keir to do. So one hopes.
I mean, there was a lot of laughter when he made his little muck-up about North Korea and, you know, Rachel Reeves has been heckled and she had a laugh about it. It's kind of gallows humour, isn't it, Gillian?
Well, I mean, I suppose he's avoided being even more unpopular than he is, if that's possible. And I think, you know, that is only possible by a couple of percent, but he could go even further. So he's avoided an own goal. I mean, look, it's good. Any relief. But every one of us knows, you go to the petrol, it literally, you notice it now.
Yes.
It is over £100 to fill up your car. It's massive. And particularly in rural communities, because actually the costs are much higher. There's often not, you know, very competitive supermarkets all competing together. And of course, you need your car more. So I think it really is something, not just in our country, all over the US. You go to the US, everybody's talking about gas prices.
Yeah, but, you know, you've both admitted it is good news.
Yes.
We agree. Oh,
it
no.
Is. It could have been terrible.
Sorry.
And it's better than
good news.
the alternative for sure.
Of course it is.
Yeah.
OK, so you both admit it's good news, and we're going to talk about a trade deal as well, which is also good news.
Yeah.
The minister's going to come in and talk about that. However, it just feels like they both know, if you look at their demeanour, the Prime Minister, the Chancellor, they're laughing they're laughing about it. It just feels like it's over for them.
I don't agree, because they're still actually running the country. And what I want from any Prime Minister at any time is for them to focus as hard as possible on running the country, running it well. I know I come on here every week, Cathy, and say people want the potholes filled, the food bills to go down, and a GP appointment from my mum. Newsflash, still haven't got one. So, but these are the bread and butter issues that people notice, and people will notice at the petrol, because Gillian's absolutely right. We all notice now what the price of petrol is when you go to fill up your car. It will make a difference. And I'm glad that Keir is prioritising getting the cost of living down, because that is what matters to people.
It's going to be hell in the autumn, isn't it?
Yeah, and it is all going up. Everything's going up. Yeah. And now this is not going to go up by what it would have gone up by. And it's a very small bit in terms of the household budget, but it's better than nothing. And the reason that I think their demeanour is how it is because they've completely lost authority. And when you've lost authority in the House of Commons, it's incredibly difficult to get taken seriously. And actually, it's incredibly difficult to get legislation through as well. And that is just going to get harder for them as well, I believe.
But we've got a big legislative programme.
Yeah, but I don't think you'll get it all through.
Well, I have been studying the bills that are coming up, that are starting in the Lords. I've been going through them with
I'm suspecting you'd vote for them, but I'm suspecting not everybody else will.
It's not a big legislative programme, is it? It's wafer-thin legislative programme.
It's 32 bills. That's a lot of bills. Some of them are incredibly long, but some of them are really, really important. And
we're now measuring progress by the word. That is the ultimate in processology.
Well, that is a word now, isn't it?
It is a word.
I'm not using it.
It's a
you
word.
used it, I'm not using it.
Well, look, have a listen to this, because this pertains to everything we've just been talking about. Because I spoke with Lord Stuart Rose, the former M&S and Asda boss, now member of the Lords, asked him whether the various measures being discussed today were reasonable and enough. Stuart Rose, the government's trying to ease the pressures of cost of living by postponing the fuel duty increase. Road hauliers are going to get a tax holiday. Do you back those moves? Do you think it's sensible?
Well, all I can say, Cathy, is hallelujah. But what's taken them so long? Because it's almost as if they only believed, and the only person I think did believe it was Trump himself, that this war would be over in a month or a week. And it's not. It's going to go on for some time. It's going to have repercussions right the way through the end of the year. So the government does need to wake up, smell the coffee, and do something. And hallelujah, they've done something this morning on duty.
What about when it comes to easing sanctions on Russian oil? Are you happy for that, or would you rather that they get all of the oil and gas out of the North Sea first?
Well, you prompted me. I mean, I still don't understand 2 months into this why we're stuck with this ideological view that we cannot move and help ourselves with what's left of our remaining resources. And there are more resources left in the North Sea than they were admitting to. We should have done that. We should have done it 2 months ago. I'm very queasy about relaxing sanctions on Russian oil.
I mean, do you have any hope that they'll change their mind on the North Sea?
Well, I live in hope every day, but as you know, I'm a glass half full man. But yes, maybe they eventually will. I think there'll be pressure because it's quite clear now that the UK economy, precarious as it is going to face a very, very tough time. And I think we need to do everything. Everybody's got to do their little bit, and government has got the biggest buttons and the biggest levers. So get on with it, please.
Right, you say everybody's got to do their little bit. Does that include supermarkets lowering prices, which is what they're coming under pressure from the government to do?
I walked into that, didn't I? But I mean, this proposal, I have to tell you, in 50 years of working in retail, is astonishingly naive, right? Because it actually fundamentally asks the question is, do we want state control? Do we want communism? Do we want socialism? Or do we want a free market economy? You cannot mess around with markets. And that's what's happening now with other markets. But you can help yourself. No, I think this idea on what they're trying to do on foods is complete and utter nonsense. And I can, I'm happy to discuss, but I believe it's...
Well, let's discuss. You just said it was communism. It's very far from that. It's just a voluntary move, putting pressure on supermarkets. They'll get an easing of regulations in return. I mean, that's hardly Soviet, is it?
Well, it is. It is effectively, that is blackmail. You're saying, if you do this, I will give you that. They shouldn't have done that in the first place. They shouldn't have done energy costs, what they've done to it. They shouldn't have done employment rights bill. They shouldn't have done national insurance increase. They shouldn't have done the minimum wage increase to the extent that they did. They shouldn't have burdened business with the extra costs that they've got and then say, oh, we've made a mistake, which the implication is we've made a mistake, and therefore we're going to ease your burden a bit, providing you guarantee to fix your prices. But let's be practical. Who's going to fix these prices? What is the basket? What are the prices going to be? Who's going to police it? Who's going to actually say whether it's spaghetti or rice? Who's going to say whether it's bread or milk? I don't understand how they possibly make it work.
Well, I mean, it's only voluntary, as I say. That is the proposal, although we haven't seen...
Well, the answer is quite simple. If it's voluntary, no. Thank you very much indeed. Go and bother somebody else. It's a bad idea come up by a mad politician. I don't know who thought it up, but if it's one of Rachel Reeves' ideas, it's bonkers.
Well, when we come to
won't work. It won't work, Cathy, because we've tried fixing prices for years. They did it in 1970s when, sadly, I was already working. You cannot impose that because somebody has to pay the bill. So if we fix prices in retailers, and I'm not conflicted because I don't work for a retailer anymore, but if you fix the price of milk, and the price of milk is going up because the transport costs are going up and the energy costs are going up, somebody's going to have to pay for that. So the retailer has a sacrifice margin, or the farmer has to give up a bit of margin, or the transporter has to give up a bit of margin, but it costs somebody. So who's going to do it? And why would you volunteer to do it?
But, Stuart, how is it any different from the energy price cap, which has now sort of come in? You know, people might have howled before it did come in, but now it's sort of working quite well, isn't it?
No, the energy price cap is nothing but a little bit of a smokescreen. It's £100 off somebody's bill for a quarter, and it will go up and down, guided by markets. Your bigger question ought to be, Cathy, with respect, is why are our energy costs in this country 4 times the energy costs of any other country pretty well? That is the issue. And the issue is we're driving headlong into going into net zero by 2050, when we can say, OK, times are tough, circumstances are different. Let's actually go down a different route, maybe take a little bit longer. And that's what they're doing. Their government is stuck in their ways and they won't move.
I'm going to punt that back to you on retail, because you could also ask the question why the UK has consistently had one of the highest rates of household food insecurity and food poverty in Western Europe. Maybe the supermarkets have got something to answer for.
I don't understand the argument. Food poverty in terms of what?
Well, I mean, just look at the figures from the Trussell Trust, for example. Many years they've shown that 1 in 4 children grow up in food-insecure households. Is that nothing to do with the supermarkets? Should they take some
No, I
responsibility?
think we've got the most efficient industry pretty well in the world, and the government's trying to tinker with it. I mean, next week, no doubt, they'll try and nationalise retailers. This is nonsense. We have got the best retail industry, probably, well, it's certainly in foods in the world. We are very efficient. We've got plenty of competition. The consumer's got plenty of choice to go to different supermarkets if they want to. If the price of milk in one place is too expensive, they can cross the road and try and go to somewhere else, just like they can with petrol. But at the end of the day, we are not running now a government which can fund everybody's needs or sense of entitlement. Now, of course, I don't want to see children starving, but I don't believe that the problem can't be solved by people being more sensible about the way they manage their affairs.
Well, you talked about a sense of entitlement there. You also let slip earlier in the interview that you were working in the 70s. I think you were born just after the Second World War. Do you think people have forgotten the kind of hardship, rationing that, people had to live through then?
Well, listen, I mean, I'm going to get bombarded with people saying that I don't understand or the world's changed. Yes, of course. At the end of the day, my mum and my dad had 2 jobs, because he couldn't afford to keep us when we only had 1 job. So he used to come out of 1 job during the day and go and work in another job in the evening. I lived in a caravan. We didn't have a television. We didn't have a car. We had to worry about all sorts of things. But at the end of the day, we managed. I was warm. I was clean. I was looked after, and I believe that I was loved. But at the end of the day, we do have a sense of entitlement and expectation here. And I'm afraid that we've just got to a point now where we can't afford it. We are living above our means. Now, that might sound cruel, but it's true.
I mean, a lot of people listening might feel that's a bit heartless, when they're struggling to make ends meet, put food on the table. The Scottish government, the SNP, are introducing mandatory food controls, they say, and the reason for that, they say, is a long-term public health issue, that, if lower-income families are having to eat more processed food, there's going to be more diabetes, more obesity in years to come. What do you say to that?
Well, what I say is rather ironically that if I heard some of the comments this morning that the proposal from the Treasury possibly might be that the government would relax the new laws or restrictions coming in on selling unhealthy food. Well, if that's the case, they're shooting themselves in the foot, aren't they?
Mm. So what do you say to my point about, people who are struggling to put food on the table, who might bridle at what you said about entitlement?
Well, listen, I come from a difficult background, so I know what it's like to live in difficult circumstances. I know what it's like to be washed in a bath until I was 7, but in a tin bath until I was 7. But at the end of the day, I don't believe that people are starving in this country. I believe that if you do have a serious need, that this government will look after you. We cannot be spending £320 billion a year on welfare for it going nowhere. So it's either going to the wrong people at the wrong place at the wrong time, or that we need to rethink that, and we need to rethink the way that it's done. But I don't believe that that is an endemic problem in the UK. What I do think is that when the price of things goes up, like petrol, or when mortgages went up during the COVID pandemic, everybody said, oh, the government's got to bail me out. The government can't afford to bail you out. And that's my fundamental point. We are now borrowed to the hilt. The cost of borrowing has gone up. We cannot afford to pay our debts. And if we as a country can't pay our debts, how can we help those people at the poverty end?
Stuart Rose not mincing his words. Well, this chart explains why Sir Keir Starmer feels like focusing on the cost of living is his best bet to extend his time in office. YouGov regularly asks people what they think are the most important issues facing the country right now. Now, look at how since the start of the year, immigration, the purple line, has been dipping, and how the economy, the red line, has been ticking up. Sky's Dan Whitehead earlier caught up with Lisa, who was loading up her shopping in a car park near Bristol earlier.
There's talk of the government capping prices in supermarkets on essential items, bread, eggs, things like that. Do you think that's a good idea?
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, I run a club for old people on a Friday, and we provide an afternoon tea kind of offering. And I started it about 18 months ago. And we used to be able to get that in for about £45 to £50, and now we're looking at £70 minimum now.
And is it a combination, not just of increased food inflation, but everything's gone up, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Your bills,
yeah.
Talk to me about...
Petrol, yeah, going to the supermarket is, driving there is costing more because petrol costs so much more. So, yeah, everything's just shocking. Don't think there's anything that hasn't gone up, is there? So, except for wages.
Well, Thangam and Gillian are still here. Thangam, what did he make of Stuart Rose talking about communist madness, you know, Soviet blackmail, it was bonkers? Was he right?
Well, I think Stuart put up a
just a yes will do,
just a yes will do with it. Now, I'm not going to give you just a simple yes, because I think he had a lot to say that was really, really important. And one of the things that I thought was particularly important was that he raised the problem of how do you decide what goes in it? Who decides? If we're making decisions about what people can afford to eat and what they can't afford to eat, you're also making a decision about who gets to have that. You know, it's a very odd way, in my view, and I say this with the greatest of love for my colleagues who just want to tackle the cost of living crisis. That's not how we're going to tackle the cost of living crisis, in my view, and I think Stuart Rose explained that very robustly.
Indeed he did. Gillian, is it a simple yes from you that he was right?
He was right, and it is bonkers. I mean, we did used to have a Minister for Prices in the 70s, and go and have a look what happened. It was bonkers. And the other thing is, what people really
And by the way, the Tories, it was Ted Heath who did price control in the 70s.
And that's why he was gone not long after, right? It's just, it defies economic logic. And it's like, you know, it's like putting Spanx on it. It'll come out somewhere, right? You know, there will be a bolt somewhere. It does. You're too thin to know.
That is quite an
Look,
image.
she's tiny. But it is like that. And the thing is that...
The Gillian Keegan theory of economics.
Why you shouldn't wear Spanx.
It's all about the Spanx.
Spanx-onomics. That's why you shouldn't wear them if you've got anything to hide. But the thing is, it is your money. So that's the other thing. What you're really saying to everybody is, your tax money, do you want to subsidise eggs for everybody? Because they think it's like some government money, or that it's coming from wealthy people. Well, as we saw, 20% of the richest people in the country left last year. So there are no simple answers. It is your money, and therefore you will be subsidising everybody's. And as you say, eggs. Does everyone want to eat eggs? No.
They do not. But I'm not sure that that's what Rachel was suggesting. I mean, I don't think she was suggesting the taxpayer pays for the discounted food.
Who
I think she was expecting that the supermarkets. I think that's one of the reasons why Stuart's
She
so
doesn't
cross,
control
really.
the supply chain. So what would happen is the farmers would get it out of their margin, because the supermarkets have the power because they're the distributor, which means she'll also do, you know, she's bashing the farmers yet again.
However, I think what...
We'll have no farmers left.
Rachel has rightly, and Keir have rightly been focused on the cost of living. We saw the graph, and, you know, the fuel prices, that's one of the things Keir announced today. I think the fact that we have got the energy bill cap, that is good, although obviously it is going to end.
Yep.
Food, it would be ridiculous not to look at it, and I don't think any binding agreement has actually come out of it.
They should look at things they can do. They should look at things they can do.
And what about Stuart Rose's point about, you know, he was a war baby, or just after, you know, he lived in a caravan and people have this sense of entitlement, he put it. You know, I push back on it just because I think a lot of people watching will think, well, you know, they're really struggling. It is tough to pay your rent and put food on the table. Where do you sit on that?
It is tough. Things are tough. It is difficult. And, you know, my test remains the same. Does Mrs Evans have to add up her things in Tesco's, in big Tesco's in Newport? Other supermarkets are available. And yes, she does. However, I still hold that the answer to that is we grow the economy. Now, growing the economy is easier said than done. I know that.
And that's been the mission from day one.
And that's been the problem. Everything they've done has not grown the economy.
But it's the right aim, though, isn't it, Gillian?
It is the right aim.
If we agree that that's
but that's why you don't put a jobs tax on, you don't put the employment rights bill on, you don't cause unemployment to go up, and you don't cause investment in the country to go down. So
and you don't put
it's the right aim. And you don't do that, definitely not. Not if you sat here, anyway.
But, you know, I think the government's been criticised if they try to put up wages for low-paid workers, you know, the minimum wage. I think that is important, because that's a really good way.
And to be fair, we all had that objected to have it as the medium wage across the country.
Thing to do.
But all the rest of it is nonsense. The employment rights bill, if we get back to power, it'll go out in no time.
No. Giving workers' rights is a good thing to do. People have the right
Giving
to be
workers jobs is even better.
Giving workers jobs and rights is even better than that.
They do have rights, and we have great workers' rights in the country.
Now we've had the Labour government bring in
are you drifting towards communism, your party? And might you even further under Alan Burnham?
We are not. More quickly.
We are nowhere near communism, and rightly so. We celebrate having a well-regulated free market economy, and there's a good reason for that. You know, it's like democracy. The worst system there is, apart from all the others. Well-regulated capitalism.
Yeah, but the billionaires are leaving, aren't they?
Choice.
Do you worry about?
I worry more about working people. The people that worry me most.
But the billionaires
whether or
support
not
working people, don't they?
Oh, Cathy.
Well, they do. They get taxed. And they also invest in businesses,
and that's
they're
not
a part
what's
of
paying
the
the bills.
economy.
Growing the economy is important, and that's the way we're going to get people.
They are part of growing the economy.
They are, and I'd like them not to leave, because Britain is a wonderful place to live.
Because also some billionaires are working people, aren't they? They work.
Yes.
They support the economy.
But there's a whole load of other countries that are sat there thinking, I'm going to incentivise these people to come here because I also need to grow my economy. And they have been successful at taking our millionaires and billionaires.
Like Italy, for example.
I like Italy,
It's
like
a fair
Portugal.
point, but trickle-down economics is a failed economic model. It's
Wasn't
not as good
quite
as
what I was
Spanxonomics.
arguing.
No, I know it wasn't quite what you were arguing.
You're liking this
but I'm
Spanx.
still,
You haven't got any, have you? You definitely haven't got any.
I'm going to go with this one. I think that, you know, what I most want this government to concentrate on actually is governing for all the people. I think that was something which we saw Mark Carney speak about last week in one of his speeches, governing for all Canadians. And I think that if you've got a priority, you're going to have to choose. If you're a Labour government, you're always going to try and work out the best way for lower middle income people to be better off. I don't think that food price fixing is the way to do it. I also think that that particular choice of foods that the Scottish nationalists have come up with is
there's haggis on there.
It's very, very strange.
Haggis must
Well,
be on
it's
there,
no good if
surely.
you're a vegan.
It's absolutely no good if you're a vegan. I am a lapsed vegan, but I think there's quite a lot of people who would look at that and say, nah, it's not going to work for me.
Right. Well, I'm so glad that we've coined the term Spanxonomics.
We're going to develop this theme.
Well, yesterday we had warnings that energy bills for households in Great Britain could go up by more than £200 a year from this summer. One charity said it would be a kick in the teeth for millions of people struggling to get by. Earlier, I spoke with Rachel Fletcher from Octopus Energy about what her firm thinks needs to happen to help tackle the issue. Octopus generates only renewable energy, but you do buy and sell fossil fuels. Do you want the government to look again at the ban on North Sea oil licences, or are you content with this faster push for renewables, even though it's going to cost people?
Well, look, yes. I mean, the future for Britain has to be a clean power system, and we have to electrify as much as we possibly can, both our heating and our transport where we can. But it's going to take a while to get off gas. You know, we're fully behind that mission. It's something we think this government has been very ambitious on. And whilst we need gas, you know, to heat our homes and to power some of our industries, and we've got it in our own area in the North Sea, why not use it? That's going to...
So remove that ban?
I mean, we think it makes sense to continue to use what is there, particularly because although we probably aren't going to see lower prices as a result of domestic gas use, we will be benefiting from the tax and the jobs that come from continuing to exploit our own gas resources.
We saw the fiasco over HS2 and the spiralling costs of that. How confident are you that the grid can be upgraded to cope with the extra wind power that's being generated, and that we're not going to see another sort of HS2 situation there?
Yeah, look, I think we are overly dependent on building more grid at the moment to go alongside our shift to renewables. And we have already seen delays in some of those big grid upgrades, and we are concerned about the impact, actually, that will have on customer bills. Alongside building out the grid, we do need to get better at managing a renewable system and using the opportunity of shifting demand, using the big grid-scale batteries on the system to help manage our system even before or instead of just relying on increasing grid build.
Well, we've had a row about Russian oil sanctions and whether Ukraine was being let down today. We'll explain what's been going on next.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
Perfect.
Let's bring you some breaking news. Being a Sky News presenter. I began by asking...
Thank you so much.
...trusting us to tell her story. The battle for number 10. Sky News has been given exclusive access. Let me give you a sneak peek. It was the day those present would never forget. Why did you decide to open up and tell your story?
Well, yesterday we told you the government was watering down sanctions on Russian oil by issuing a trade licence to allow diesel and jet fuel made from Russian oil and refined elsewhere to end up in the UK. That led to quite the row earlier and accusations that the UK was letting down Ukraine. But Sir Keir Starmer earlier told the Commons the government wasn't lifting sanctions and was instead delaying them because of worries about supply issues and price rises caused by the war in Iran.
What we announced yesterday was a strong new package of new sanctions, going well beyond existing sanctions. So it's a new package. This includes new bans on maritime services on LNG and new bans on refined oil products from Russia. We also issued 2 targeted short-term licences to phase the new sanctions in and to protect UK consumers. Mr. Speaker, that is standard practice. This government has phased in sanctions in this way before, and the last government used exactly the same technique when they introduced sanctions. And when they did so, Mr. Speaker, we supported them because we could see the sanctions were the right thing to do to bear down on Russia. So these are new sanctions being phased in. This is not a question of lifting existing sanctions in any way whatsoever, and we will continue to work with our allies on further sanction packages.
But Kemi Badenoch didn't hold back, saying the decision was wrong and would cost Ukrainian lives.
Being patronising is not a substitute for understanding policy. And I've heard this term, Mr. Speaker, I've heard this tone before. This is the same tone he used during the Mandelson scandal, and they were all cheering, and then it turned out that he was wrong, wrong, wrong. He says that other countries are doing this. The EU is not doing this. Let me make it clear. I know it hurts him to hear it. He is now choosing to buy dirty Russian oil. That money will be used to fund the killing of Ukrainian soldiers. Isn't he ashamed?
So why the confusion then? We were certainly given the impression from the government last night that these sanctions were being watered down. Well, after Starmer left the chamber, Trade Minister Chris Bryant came to the dispatch box and apologised, admitting he was to blame and that the government's handling of the issue had been clumsy.
Well, the one bit I completely agree with him on is that we've handled this clumsily, and that's entirely my fault, and I apologise to all honourable members. I think we've ended up giving the wrong impression of what we're trying to do. We're trying to strengthen the regime, not weaken it. We're not waiving any sanctions, and as I say, for the first time from today, we have legislation in place which means that it will be illegal to import Russian refined goods that have been refined in a third country, including India and Turkey and elsewhere.
Dare I say it, a refreshingly speedy apology from the Minister, who is here right now, in fact. Chris Bryant, we'll chat to you about other things, which I know you want to talk about, the trade deal and so on, in a second. But just explain why you felt you had to apologise.
So it's slightly complex. OK.
In brief.
I'm sorry about this. Well, just give me a moment.
You're sorry again? An apology about the apology?
Well, I'm British. We apologise. So, look, number one, I think most people thought, and I understand why they would think this, that it was already illegal to import Russian crude oil products that have been processed in a third country into the UK. But that isn't true. It's been perfectly legal until today. So the new sanction is today, along with other sanctions that we've introduced, so more tankers part of the Russian shadow fleet and so on, we've been taking in sanctions. So
actually, it was pretty disgraceful that was allowed until today, wasn't it?
Completely. And indeed, when I arrived in post, one of the first things, last September, one of the first things I said, why on earth are we still allowing this? I don't understand it.
It was a glaring loophole.
Yeah, well, quite. And the truth is, with the Russian sanctions, it's a constant ratchet up. And there's another thing that we've discovered actually recently, which I don't know why we were allowing, but quite often British companies sell something to a third country and then mysteriously it ends up in Russia. And it would, if it was sold directly to Russia, it would be sanctioned. So what we're doing now is where we've introduced a new law which says that, which we call the sanctions end use control, which means that if we spot a company which is repeatedly sending things to third country, which we know ends up in Russia, they have to get a licence before they can export it. So my point is that it's a bit like whack-a-mole. You have to keep on introducing new elements of these sanctions. But I want to be absolutely clear that we have not suspended a rule that existed yesterday.
Right.
The sanctions regime today is stronger than it was yesterday. The only bit that I think has thrown the confusion into this is that we have decided, as we've often done with sectoral sanctions like this, individuals, when you sanction, you have to do it immediately because otherwise, you know, they'd evade the sanctions. But with sectoral ones, we've tended to introduce them in a phased way. Canada's done this, and I think Australia as well.
Right.
And that's what we decided to do in this case.
OK, so can I just clarify one
absolutely.
thing? Imports of Russian-derived jet fuel from India, are they currently allowed as of today?
They are, if they're licensed today, then they will be OK, as they were yesterday and the day before and for the last...
And is that going to
ever since 2022. No, I hope that we will be able to stop this soon.
Well, but how soon? That's the thing.
So what we've made clear in the legislation that we've introduced is that it says that we can suspend these licences immediately if we want to. So what I have said today, and I said in the chamber earlier, is that we're going to be reviewing these very regularly. Right. Can I just explain why we did it, why we're phasing rather than doing it immediately? And that is because we were aware, because of the situation in the Gulf, that we
Which
were
I want
a bit...
to come to.
Yeah, sure. And I want to come to as well. That's why I'm wearing my snazzy shoes.
Yeah, you are.
Thank you very much.
All dressed up with nowhere to go. Well,
I have got somewhere to go. I've come here. I'm on the salmon sofa, for heaven's sake.
Okay. Anyway, the Gulf.
Let's behave. Look, what is the point I'm trying to make? The point is that because of the situation in the Gulf, which has provided lots of problems for us, which we're very concerned about, you know, the access to fertiliser is almost certainly going to affect food prices in the UK and all of that. But one of the things that we have been nervous about is that there will be a sudden spike in energy prices in the UK if we didn't phase this in.
Right.
So that's why we've done it. It's phased. It's stronger today than it was. We stand 100% with Ukraine, and I am absolutely mortified that because I've been. I think both of you would say that my history has been that I've been one of the most robust anti-Putin critics for a very long time.
You booed.
I didn't get on the list.
No. So I'm not on the sanctions list.
I am.
Weirdly, but when I raised this with the Russian ambassador, he said to me, "We have many lists."
So you're on a list somewhere.
I'm on a list.
You should be
on the list.
I don't know what it is.
Anyway, listen. I want to talk about your Gulf deal because you've got a trade deal with the Gulf, which you're pleased about. A lot of people.
I'm so delighted. Right. I cannot tell you how many hours of negotiations. So the Gulf is obviously 6 countries, and Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Qatar, and so on, and 1.3 trillion economy, I think. We've done a deal. We've not signed. We've concluded the negotiations today. We had a moment in Number 10 Downing Street earlier. It's 93% of UK exports into the Gulf will be tariff-free. That's millions of pounds of saving to British businesses, enabled in services and in customs. There's so many things that are going to make it much easier for British businesses to do business out there. It's worth £3.7 billion a year in future years to the UK GDP and £1.9 billion a year for British salaries.
And I want to come back to those figures in just a second, but I don't want to be a party pooper. But
you're going to be.
I'm going to be. The TUC actually is going to be a party pooper because they've said, you know, the Gulf countries have an appalling record on human rights. And, you know, as a gay man, I just wondered how you feel about, you know, publicising this deal when, for example, Saudi Arabia has the death penalty for same-sex relations. I mean, that is awkward, isn't it?
So 2 things to say. First of all, we were very keen to make sure that there was what's known normally as a general collaboration chapter, which deals with human rights issues, for labour issues, women's empowerment in the economy, environment and so on. It is the strongest chapter that the GCC have ever put in an FTA.
That's
I'm
the
really
Gulf
proud of that.
Cooperation
Council.
Council.
Yes. And they negotiate on behalf of all 6 countries together. So I'm really proud of that. I've also taken many, many opportunities as part of these discussions, and also when I was a culture minister before, to raise human rights issues on a
So
wide
even while this
variety of
deal was
issues.
being negotiated, you didn't shy away from raising those issues?
Of course not. And I don't... I mean, you point out that I'm a gay man. I don't think you're giving... That's not news to anybody.
Yeah.
And I've often talked about my husband as well.
Yeah.
Honestly...
And you would do that in the negotiations?
I mean, not all the time.
Yeah. Well, there were other things to talk about.
Yeah, there are other things to talk about. And in the main, of course, we're mostly discussing tariff lines, what to do about electric vehicles. Are they going to be liberalised after 3 years, 5 years or 10 years or whatever? But...
Let me come back to the figures, because, as you said, it's a deal worth £3.7 billion a year.
Yep.
You know, that's a nice figure. It's been estimated, though, that leaving the EU has cost up to £240 billion a year. I just wonder whether you sympathise with your dearly departed colleague, Wes Streeting.
He's not dearly departed. He's still a colleague.
Yeah, not in the Cabinet, not in the government.
And I'm not in the Cabinet either. It's an outrage, isn't it? Let's sort that out.
Absolute outrage.
Do you sympathise with his calls to rejoin the EU?
Look, I'm a Remainer. I was a Remainer. I remain a Remainer. I will remain a Remainer until my dying day. I, as Trade Minister, it upsets me. Two things upset me. In particular, one is that 16,000 fewer businesses, UK businesses, now trade into Europe. So we need to sort out all the barriers to trade than before Brexit. So we need to sort out all the barriers to trade. But the other thing is, I was in the chemotherapy ward in La Paz Hospital in Madrid last week, looking at, you know, the kind of caps, the cooling caps that are used for people, so people keep their hair.
Yeah. Oh, sorry,
yeah. So that's produced by a company called Paxman in Huddersfield. I think I'm going to earn...
you've mentioned them a few times.
I have, because it's really good stuff. It's kit that's used in lots of places in Europe. But they had to do all their licensing, which costs tens of thousands of pounds in the UK, and then they had to do it again in Europe. Well, wouldn't it be better if they could just do it once?
So rejoin the EU, as Wes Streeting has suggested?
Good try. Good try. You've done this
before,
before,
do you believe it or not?
Look, we got elected on a manifesto in the general election. What I'm trying to do in my job at the moment is I'm trying to cut down all the barriers to trade that there might be for a British business trying to do business in Europe.
But I can put you down as a Wes backer.
No. I'm a backer.
Look,
it's so sly. So
You're on a
sly.
spreadsheet.
You know what you should do? You should go into journalism.
Let me bring in Gillian. I mean, this Gulf deal, it's a very good deal, isn't it?
It's a good deal, and it's actually a Brexit benefit, because actually doing a deal as the UK, and I also voted Remain, but I am a Democrat, therefore I completely accepted the vote.
And he's not.
Doing this deal, he wouldn't have been able to do it if we hadn't left.
However, I'm very hopeful that the EU
would have had to do it. And there you go. But that is, we are leaders, and we should we should know and be confident in ourselves as a country, as leaders. They may follow us, and we would have been waiting for them to lead us, and now we're not because of Brexit. So we can say there are some, you know, this is pros and cons, but that is definitely a pro.
Let me do a con. Oh, sorry.
We were leaders.
Go on,
when we were in the EU, we had a leading role, and we had trade deals which were negotiated en bloc.
Yes, but we didn't really play the leading role in those trade deals.
This is how it...
Go on, do a con.
I want to do a con, because it's something I've been working on very hard at the moment.
You were just so delighted with your deal, though.
I am very delighted
so
with my deal.
happy.
I'm really pleased. And honestly,
Brexit benefit that you got.
I'm very fond of the people that my counterparts that I've been working with. And my team, Tom and Anna, in the department, have been absolutely amazing.
It's not the Oscars, you know.
Yes.
And my parents
it's
are both
leadership
dead. Anyway,
speech
look,
next.
let me do the con. So one of the things that we have at the moment is we have an issue for steel. So we know that overcapacity for steel is making it very difficult for steel production in the UK and for that matter, in the whole of the European Union. The European Union is introducing a new set of steel tariffs which will come into effect on the 1st of July, and we're doing something similar. We're not each other's problem, but because we're not in the same union, we have to basically cut each other's quotas, and that's going to do damage to each other. Yeah. So, of course, we've got to come to a negotiated settlement. So there are cons, many, many cons, and you used to make this argument.
I would love to see that negotiation if we were still part of the EU.
Well, there wouldn't have to be a negotiation.
No, there would, because there would still be whose industry most benefits and whose industry is most disbenefited.
No. If we were in the European Union,
there would.
If we were in the European Union, we would be in the European Union.
Yes, but there is
That's
still.
the concept of the union.
If you're talking about sharing, cutting quotas across manufacturing because there's oversupply in 6 countries,
that's what you would have.
I haven't explained this well enough.
That's what you would have.
Who takes the biggest pain?
I think when it comes to talking about whether or not to return to the EU, we're missing various things. And I felt that when I saw the guys who constantly campaigning for rejoining outside Westminster today.
So I thought you were talking about West for a minute.
Well, I saw him too.
him as well.
Policy and politics, there are huge problems because A, at the moment there is no offer. B, most of us who are going through that, and I heard Chris say I'm a Remainer till I die in Parliament many times. I would say I am absolutely
She's accusing me of being repetitive.
No, but I did hear you say
boring.
Not boring, never that. However,
repetitive.
We are Remainers till we die. It doesn't mean that rejoining is a simple thing.
Yeah, but I think he actually does
It
want
really
to
isn't.
rejoin, though. I mean, genuinely.
I would like to rejoin, but I'm not saying it's a good idea to try talking about it right now when actually we've got a whole load of other problems that are right in front of us.
It wouldn't go down well in your Ronda constituency, would it?
I'm doing inscrutable.
And doing it very well. So I will do it for
Without
him.
Botox.
I will do it.
It wouldn't go down with the country. They had a vote. Whether you believe that they should have or not, they did. They voted. You have to implement it. It's non-negotiable.
The
most important thing is to get as frictionless trade as we possibly can.
I agree with Boris Johnson, we didn't get that.
And the deal that Boris did was absolutely terrible.
Because he didn't read it.
So, no, indeed. And one of the odd things is that because of the Windsor framework... Sorry, just let me finish. Because of the Windsor framework, quite often what happens is the EU implements something, it has to be implemented in Northern Ireland, and then we go, well, we can't have a border between Northern Ireland and the rest of the UK, so we'll have to implement it for the whole of the UK.
Chris, you've been a very good sport being harangued by everyone on the sofa.
I am a good sport.
He harangued as well.
But I'm being told that we have to let you go, so I want to ask you one question on Wes, because that resignation speech, it wasn't Geoffrey Howe, it wasn't Norman Lamont. It was really quite nice about the Prime Minister and the Chancellor. Are you wondering why he resigned?
Well, I didn't see it, I'm afraid, because I was doing a deal with the GC... Well, first of all, I was doing all the stuff about sanctions in the Chamber, and then I was doing the deal with the Gulf. So, honestly, I haven't seen it. I can't really comment. I mean, I love Wes. He's great, and I think he speaks very effectively to the country. I'm really pleased that we've managed to get waiting lists down, you know, heaven knows the NHS needs to be more efficient and effective, and we need to drive forward that kind of change. I'm also pleased that we've got inflation down. It's actually... Don't tell anybody, but it's been quite a good week because we've managed to get inflation down.
Please, can we
and we've managed to get growth
We
up.
need good news.
And we've got a deal with the Gulf, which is worth £3.7 billion a year.
You know what? Because you haven't seen the Wes speech, you can stick around and watch it because we're about to show it. But thanks very much. You've been great. Thank you.
I might have somewhere to go, contrary to what you said.
With your red socks and your nice laces. Chris, thank you very much. Now, I'm sure oil sanctions, the cost of living and much more will be featured on our late-night programme, The Wrap, tonight from 10 p.m. Here to discuss all of today's big stories and the best of tomorrow's papers will be the journalist and broadcaster Jenny Kleeman and the Chief Executive of Total Politics Group, Mark Wallace.
I left the government because we are in the fight of our lives against nationalism. And it is a fight that we are currently losing.
This is how you travel when the mafia wants to kill you.
He's almost given up his own freedom, but that's the price he's willing to pay.
Here, they don't just arrest and Ndrangheta mafia members, they also live among them.
Time after time, I've seen the devastating impact of extreme weather and climate change.
We don't have much snow at the moment.
They've had a warm spring and exceptionally hot summer, and that means they're expecting to lose more than 3 times the amount of ice than they usually do.
Flames are still forcing people from their homes and leaving many questioning their futures.
Here was my life. We have nothing. I can't say anything, it's so sad.
This disaster is testing the resolve of everyone on this island.
The only way out now is by boat.
Everything you see is devastated, and the misery being felt by people living here is repeated in towns and villages across Central Europe.
Sky News, get the full story first. Turkey is burying its dead. The loss is profound.
Whole families died in this collapse, generations wiped out.
The violence has penetrated the heart of the city rather than being contained to the estates around the edge, and that speaks to the level of anger being felt here. In Sweden, police have seized a lethal stash. This is just a small sample of the deadly arsenal taken off the streets.
This is an example of an advert, really. Anyone of any age could say, I'll do that for £1 million, and then have to go and shoot someone.
Yes.
I'm Siobhan Robbins, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Berlin.
Fire, shouts the commander. There's a dash to safety. We've now got to wait inside the shelter to see if there is incoming. I'm Deborah Hames, Sky's security and defence editor. Should Russia's war with Ukraine escalate significantly, pilots like these could be called upon to go into combat for real.
Well, as we just discussed, it was a particularly busy day in the Commons earlier. We also had the notable moment of Wes Streeting giving his resignation speech after he quit his job as Health Secretary last week. He told MPs that if Labour didn't change course, it risked handing power to Reform, and that he and his party are in the fight of their lives against nationalism.
Walking through the doors of my department every day as the person entrusted with protecting the very service that saved my life has been a massive responsibility and the most enormous privilege, and not one I gave up lightly or hastily. I left the government because we are in the fight of our lives against nationalism, and it is a fight that we are currently losing. Unless we change course, we risk handing the keys of number 10 to Reform.
So that was Wes Streeting's resignation speech. And, you know, these kind of speeches can be truly historic. And I'm thinking, for example, of Geoffrey Howe, whose damning speech in 1990 helped trigger Margaret Thatcher's demise. He had this famous metaphor, cricketing metaphor, talking about the batsmen coming to the crease only to find that the team captain had broken their bats. And this wasn't like that. He still had criticism about the UK and Brexit, but he didn't go as far as he did the other day, saying that the UK should rejoin the EU, so he sort of pulled his punches on that. And he was actually really kind about the Prime Minister and the Chancellor, praising their economic record. And he said he had no regrets about resigning, but it did make me rather wonder why he had. Well, Thangam and Gillian are here with me. Do you think he does regret resigning a little bit?
He did love his job, though my mum still hasn't got her GP's appointment. This will keep... this is running until she gets one, by the way. I thought it was an odd way to frame a speech. I think we run the risk as a party at the moment of making people who are voting Reform feel like they are being told they're the problem, and that's not on. It's really not. And I know that politicians think when they say Reform that they are meaning the party or the leader, but people who vote Reform are not the problem. Yeah. People who vote Reform are making a democratic choice. I think that the Reform agenda, I think Nigel Farage taking £5 million for whatever it is this week, you know, a house or security or whatever, is a problem. That is a problem. He said it was a gift. He said it was a gift. It's still a problem. But if we start calling it, people will hand the keys to Reform. That's not the strongest argument in the book, in my book. And I think it's an odd thing to do. And I didn't love it as a speech. And considering one of Wes's strong cards is he's a great communicator, I thought it was not special.
Well, it does leave you asking why he resigned. Yes, and the reason he resigned is because 81 other people did, some of whom thought they were probably going over the top to start a leadership contest, which now is looking a bit of a dog's breakfast because it's got different strands to it.
Has he miscalculated on that?
He's miscalculated.
Well, no, I think he took a... I'm not in his head, thank goodness, but I don't think it was a question of did he have the numbers, did he not have the numbers. It's if he had the numbers and he went without Andy Burnham being there, knowing that a lot of the PLP wanted Andy. I mean, I have a problem with the fact that out of 400-odd MPs, some of whom are women. I mean, the chair of Labour Women's Network, as I am, I'm very proud of the women MPs we've got in there. At the moment, we're facing a leadership contest in which there are basically 3 white dudes, all of whom I like.
Yeah, well, it's very Labour. It's very Labour,
all of whom I like.
It's funny, isn't it, how Angela Rayner's leadership proposal has sort of fallen by the wayside?
I just want whoever is the Prime Minister to remember that they actually have strong women in their team. And, you know, Keir has promoted a lot of strong women, so I don't want loads of people telling me, oh, but, you know, but Rachel or but Harriet. Yes,
yeah, but they never
true.
get to lead.
That's true. In the Labour Party, we never elect a woman leader.
And we're on our fourth leader.
And you're on your fourth
Party of
leader,
equality.
two of colour, and we have a problem there. And I want us to think about why that might be. I also want us to focus on the fact that the biggest threat to this country at the moment, it may be interpreted as Nigel Farage, and I personally think it is. However, right now, can I just say again, cost of living, cost of living, cost of living, and potholes.
Gillian, Geoffrey Howe, Norman Lamont's resignation speeches, they were truly historic.
Yes.
I mean, do you remember that? I know you're not old enough really to remember that.
Well, no, I've watched it, and they are truly historic, and they did it with a purpose. The thing about the Conservative Party, no matter what you say, is when they want to execute something, they do it. This is a dog's breakfast. I mean, we saw David Lammy this week saying there is no leadership contest. We're like, what's happening in that place, you know, in Greater Manchester then? Why are all those people out campaigning? You know, it is really... it just looks so weak. And I think that is... And of course, Keir...
He could survive.
You do decapitate your leaders very efficiently.
If you really, I mean, to be honest, you know, some of them have needed to be after 49 days, as we know, right? So, but you know, I'd still get back to it's the members sometimes choosing the wrong leaders, and now you're going to see that yourselves.
God. You see, you're brave enough to say that.
I am brave enough to say it, and I actually believe it. Democracy is important, and that's interfering with our democracy, I believe.
Well, that's a great way to end, but I have one more thing to show you, so you are going to want to see this for sure. Because tonight, meet Womble, Britain's only baby aardvark. Womble has been running amok at Chester Zoo after being born last month. He's a pretty little fellow. But it turns out that aardvarks are notoriously bad mothers, so staff have been working around the clock to keep Womble fed and alive. Good news, given that they're having a hard time globally. And we're told she's doing very well so far. I don't know, actually, whether it's a girl or a boy, but look how... It's a she. We've had that confirmed. We're back tomorrow at 7 p.m. Bye for now. See you tomorrow.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We're in an area that's just been reclaimed.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
People are directly protesting.
The whole neighbourhood is rallied around her.
It's been impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan.
I've been waiting for this for 2 years. It doesn't feel like a big homecoming.
It was never going to be pretty. War isn't pretty.